but I think you can just go live. Yeah, boom.
All right. Little technical problem this morning, but here we are. And I don't think Don's still figured this out. How are we? Good morning. Coffee with Closers every Wednesday, 12 noon Eastern time. Okay. 11 Central, 9 Pacific if you're watching. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. We are late and we do apologize. So
hey, no worries.
Are starting to join. So that's cool.
No worries at all. Gentlemen, how are you? How was your weeks?
Good. Dave, Don, you're on mute, bud.
Am I still muted? Can you hear me?
No, you're there. You're there. Now you are. You're muted.
Back and forth. Gavin, how was your week, buddy?
Yeah, good. Yeah, all right. What have we got going on? Just the usual, really. I mean, I don't think I have anything like too exciting. I'll tell you one thing, one little share that's frustrating. And a learning curve is that we have a flip right now that we should have been listed probably 10 days ago. And we're waiting to paint the outside of the house, and it's rained every day. And we have not been able to paint it. So it's ready to go. It's ready to be listed. We're just waiting to paint it. So I guess the moral of the story is paint the house whenever you can. Don't wait till the end like we did, because now we're in, and it shouldn't be raining in Birmingham, but it literally has rained every day. We cannot paint this thing, and that's the last thing. So anyone listening, what do we put in place now? We're going to paint the damn thing as soon as we get the house and it's ready and we have a nice day. It's being painted, and then we'll do touch up. And we didn't. We flipped the whole thing. We did everything, paint it last. And now, because of the weather, we're literally nearly 2 weeks behind and still haven't painted it. So that's frustrating, but it won't happen again.
We had the same issue. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes. We
had the same issue. I mean, it's probably been 2 years, but it's a good story if you know. I mean, right now you're in the middle of July, so you probably didn't even think it was going to rain.
No, didn't even think.
But for us, it was, California has had these droughts, and we have rain and droughts. So we're coming out of a drought season, and we picked up a house, I think, in like September and November. And we had finished the rehab, had a giant yard, and we couldn't landscape it because it rained for 60 days straight almost. It was mud and muck. We literally sat on a $600,000 house. It's a very high-end rehab in our market. We sat there with our thumb up our rear end for 2 months. Because we couldn't landscape the damn thing. And had we landscaped it when we first bought the property, we would have been fabulous. I had 2 months worth of interest that I had to eat. So we've learned that if we're buying something that we're going to be doing any kind of rehab on through the winter, for sure, we're doing landscaping first.
Absolutely. But you don't realize until you live it, right? I mean, I didn't know that we were going to deal with this in July in Birmingham when it's supposed to be humid and sunny. And maybe the odd day of rain, but I mean, literally 10, 12 days straight. And again, now the part of the process is what you've just said. You go at it, anything outside, you get it done when you can, because you never know what's going to happen. So that was a learning curve.
And this is like, okay, so let's just start doing our little, what are they, euphemisms or sayings or whatever. But, people think that you come out of the gate knowing everything. We're talking about massive imperfect action, right? Systems and processes are built out of situations like this.
Yeah.
I just had my ass handed to me. I didn't know better. And now this will be a system or process I implement in my business moving forward. That's how you guys ended up with great businesses. It wasn't that you just started with a great business. It's experience. And so many people 100%. Fail to see that it's, even if I tell you exactly what to do, you're still going to make mistakes that you're going to learn from that are going to cause you to implement something in your business to make you better, period, hands down. So
that's great.
People need to hear that.
Nailed it. Yeah, you're 100% right. And I think we're always learning and tweaking, right? Because of that. And yeah, you learn from your own mistakes. And even as educators and teachers, we don't have the answers. I mean, this thing, I've just explained one that we missed. It was so simple and it makes sense, but you just take it for granted that it's not going to happen because of the time of year. And then boom, here it is, and we can't list. And again, it's ready to go, and we're paying money on it. So no, really good. So basically, the takeaway from that, the little gold, is you're going to create systems and processes as you go from things that aren't happening and need to be working better. So really good, really good.
Yeah, great point. You said 60 days of rain. Did you build an ark?
It wasn't quite 60 days of rain. It's a little exaggeration. But the thing is you need time in between rain for the ground to dry out. And we didn't have that time in between rain. So it was about 60 days of rain, but it wasn't every single day. It was,
but enough
it was enough to
get in there and
couldn't get in there without
making a bigger mess than
we had to bring in, the, what are they called? The little tractor thing, bulldozer deals or whatever, the little tiny ones. I don't even know what they're called. But we had to bring those in to move things around and move stones and different things like that. And, they were going to get stuck if if the ground wasn't dry. And it was just a thing. It was a thing.
Yeah. So now make sure you do the landscaping either first or don't wait till the end, right?
Right.
And the painting. And the painting. Because remember, it needs to dry. People are like, it's not raining now. They could do it now. Well, yeah, but it's going to rain in 3 hours and then it's just not going to be, set or whatever. So, yeah, crazy.
Love it. Guys, we got a question here. Let's take a look. So Kay says, just really curious, what's the best way to go from 1 to 2 fix and flips to 5 to 10 in a month? And Don, this is going to be all you, buddy. You're the fix and flip king here. The Don Costa.
Okay. Well, so the thing that I would say is there's a few this is a loaded question. This is like 2 days worth of conversation, to really teach, I think, how to scale a flipping organization properly. But in a nutshell, the first thing you want to look at, I think, is the most important thing is how you're borrowing money. Because most people, when they try to scale their fix and flip operation, scale themselves basically into stress and anxiety and no money in the bank. You're putting money down on properties. If you're borrowing hard money, you're having to front the rehab costs. And, you do simple math. If you have a $100,000 property, you're putting $20,000 down on, and you're buying 4 a month, that's $80,000 a month right there. If your average turn time is 120 days, if your down payments plus your monthly payments, you're out about 180 grand at the end of 120 days before you turn that first set of properties. So most people that are growing a rehab business can't sustain that part of it. And that's where the stress and anxiety comes in. You start making mistakes and bad decisions because you're operating from a position of weakness. You're trying to
start Ponziing money from one thing to the next.
Money. Yep. Square pegging, round holing situations, taking offers less than you probably deserve to get for the property because you need it off your books. That's no way to scale and run a healthy business. So the first thing, the most important thing in my book is to get how you borrow in order. And for us, it's 100% from our private money lenders. So the first thing I would do is start establishing those relationships. 100% financing. That's 100% of rehab, purchase, and holding costs. You should not be out any money out in any project, period. And the way you sell that to a private money lender is just tell them the truth. If I'm putting skin in the game on every single property, my money's not in the bank. If you have a business that does not have money in the bank and something goes wrong, am I a bad bet or a good bet?
Man, that is a great point, Don. Holy cow.
I'm a bad bet. Now, if I promise to keep operational reserves and I don't put any money in these projects and something goes wrong and I have operational reserves, am I a bad bet or a good bet? I'm a fantastic bet. I always say the F word. But I'm a fantastic bet. And that's how you sell it. And what happens is it changes the dynamic. It changes your mindset. And we talk about mindset all the time. Mindset is literally the most important part about any part of this business, whether it's sales or building your team or anything. How you operate from position in your business, whether it's weakness or power, is significant to the type of operation you build and run and whether or not it's a prison or something you enjoy. So how you borrow is the first step. Get that in order. That's number one. I can go through a half a dozen things on hiring contractors. I would literally dominate this call. What I would say is I'm working on something. I'm where I'm going to lay out like how we hire contractors, how we expect the bids to be, how we pay our contractors, basically how we systematize the whole process, even how we've cash flowed our marketing in our business by utilizing our private money lenders. And that's something that, I'll announce here in a couple of weeks. And if you want to take a stab at that, you're more than welcome to. But I don't want to dominate the call going into it. Number one, get your borrowing in order, and then we can talk about the rest. Come back and let us know you got your borrowing in order. We'll go from there.
I think just to add real quick, the next one is the crew for me. It's how much can my crew handle, and only grow as good as your crew. That's what I would do. Do not take on too many jobs when you don't have the people in place to do the work, and if they can't handle it. So our GC, we get with him and literally have the conversation. How many can you run and handle? And then he goes, we can buy one every 2 weeks. Then that's what we're on for, right? Mm-hmm. And then if we need to go, well, I want to buy 2 every 2 weeks. We'll get with him and say, can you build to the point where we can buy 2 every 2 weeks? And then we build from there. So we only grow as fast as the whole team can work. Again, that's when the anxiety kicks in. That's when the stress levels kicks in. If you have properties sitting there and you don't have the crews.
Yeah, so, and where you have crews that aren't doing the job properly, and that's people will tell you what you want to hear. That you got to be careful of. As a leader, when you go to your GC, Gavin, I know you say how many can you do. And if he says I can take on 6 every 2 weeks, he's not telling you the truth.
For sure, yes, yeah. It's building the relationship for sure.
Yeah, you got to know what's reasonable, and that there's a little bit of learning curve, but there's also the obvious too. Like the guy's got a crew of maybe 10, and so 5 can do this project and 5 can do this project, and that's realistic. And so you got to go with the obvious when you're talking to these people and set them up for success. So many people want to take what they tell us, they're going to overpromise to us. And we take that and we go, okay, well, here's 10. And then they fail and they go, well, you're an epic failure. You failed me. You're a crappy contractor. No, you're a crappy leader because you put too much on these people's plates. So there's a lot of things to look at in that, from contractors trying to cash flow on you, and that's essentially taking money from your project to pay to finish a project before your project, to overpromising and under-delivering, to, maybe they're in a cash crunch and they take on your 2 and they take on 3 from somebody else. Like, there's a lot of things you got to look for in building these relationships. People's the hardest part of this business, in any part of it. I mean, you don't want to up your marketing unless you have people in place. You don't want to up your rehabs unless you have people in place. And finding the good people on your team, that's the caveat. That's the carrot, right? The thing that makes us great or not.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing is that we got to find these things, right? Yeah. So you're finding 1 or 2. Now you're going to find 5 or 10. So you got to have that in place to actually source these deals. But again,
so there's actually a lot of things then, guys.
We could literally be here for an hour. Yeah.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is that your business isn't very elastic, especially on the money side, right? And even more so probably on the fixed side. You have to have the right people in place or processes in place. Otherwise, you're just going to have a ton of inefficiencies.
You're going to have a ton of inefficiencies. Absolutely. On the money side, once you shore that up, that changes the dynamic. Like I was talking about, you can start sliding things in for cost per deal, like your cost per deal for acquisition, your marketing cost per deal. That's a true cost per deal. And a lot of lenders will lend you that money back. So you can start recouping your marketing and how you borrow and start really running a stable business. On the people side, that's where working on yourself as a leader and looking in the mirror and taking personal responsibility is huge. Like Gavin said, asking them what they can do and not demanding what you expect, listening to what they're telling you, and then, paying attention and managing these people is very important. Ultimately, I try to hire somebody that's teachable and coachable, somebody that's going to be a teammate, and I treat them like an internal employee to a certain degree, in the sense that if there's an issue, let's work together to not have that issue on the next project. And as long as they're working with us, they're going to stay with us. And the reason why we've been successful in rehab is because we create situations and relationships with contractors where we work with them for 10 years. Yeah. And a lot of people think contractors are disposable and treat them like they're disposable. And that's why you have a business that will give you a headache. And I'd rather slam my head on a door 100 times than have a business like that. Yeah. So, people are the caveat. You can't treat them like they're disposable. Your private lenders, your contractors, any people. Once you have good people,
value those relationships.
Value those people.
100%. Because I think everyone thinks everyone's replaceable, right? Which is true. But at what cost to you?
Yeah, what cost? It's a huge pain in the ass having to replace people.
Nightmare. Because then you got to go through all the bad to get the good again. And you're back on the rat race. And I agree, just I think treat people fair. And I think it's down to communication.
It's communication. It's accepting personal responsibility. It's understanding where somebody has an opportunity to grow and then leading them in that direction.
Yeah. One of our big things that we had to get over was allowing the contractor, because obviously we're the boss, right? We're in control, but letting them have a say, right? Their expertise is better than ours. And it'll be like, oh yeah, you did, this type of work surface or cabinet, and they allowed it to happen because they didn't want to get involved, and we overspent by $5-6 grand, and they were, oh, I wouldn't have done that, I would have done this. Well, why don't you tell us?
Yeah, why don't you say so?
So again, making sure you let them have a say. Hey, if you think there's a better way, a cheaper way, a more efficient way, let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. And all these things, and they're like, oh yeah, I wouldn't have done that, and I wouldn't have done that, and I could have saved you 20 grand if we would have done it this way. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's great. Why didn't we do that? Why didn't you say, So making sure you allow them to have a say, critical as well.
So we've made all of these mistakes. That's the funny part. And that's how we know. I've got into situations where I didn't have my finance in order, like you said, Don, and you're like selling one in a hurry to get the money and leaving money on the table, right? So I love that you started with that. I think that's a great point. But there's so many other things as well.
There's so many, but the foundation,
the process,
the foundation, the foundation of how you borrow is extremely important to build, because you can't treat your people good if you're stressing about whether or not you can pay them.
And financial stress is the worst.
It's the worst
stress.
Yeah.
Yes, the worst.
And I think a good point as well, just to really highlight, is with the lending, as Don said, you've got to be pushing and building relationships to get 100% funded, because if you have 10 flips on, you could have $1 million out your own pocket in these deals. And let's be honest, there ain't many flippers out there sitting with $1 million in the bank, right? No. And if you're sitting with $1 million in the bank, the next thing is, why are you not putting some of that money to work? So you probably shouldn't be sitting with $1 million in the bank. So you got to think about that. And I think that's important. You might have to take a higher interest rate. I would take a higher interest rate and have 100% funded, especially while I'm trying to do multiple of them, than take a low interest rate and bring 20% in, because I can only do so many, 2 and I'm out. I'm done, right? So something else for someone, for you guys.
Gavin, that's such a great point. And I want to highlight something real quick. Even if you're paying a high rate, like, 12, 14, even 16, guys, I don't want to pay that high, but I'm willing to do so, because really the goal is not to have this loan out for 20 years.
Yeah.
To have the loan out for 3 months or 4 months or 5 months at the most.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, if even at 16%, 5 months, that's what, maybe six or 7 grand in interest. If you have an opportunity to go make 50,000 and you have to pay $6,000 or $7,000 in interest, and hopefully on the back end to have that opportunity, like, you're still $44,000 in the green, right?
Let's put it in perspective. I get 100% financing between 8 and 10% on a regular basis.
That's a great rate.
Really good.
That's a great rate.
Time.
Even what I'm saying is, even if it's higher, people are like, "Oh, I'm not going to do that deal." Why though? Like, you don't get it. You're not paying it long term. Keep it short.
It was me and Dave recorded on my podcast. We recorded a podcast this morning. It's not out yet, and it was really good. We were talking about this, weren't we? When you said, and I'd not heard of this before, about everyone talks about the Burr method, and I have my, personal opinion on rentals, as we've talked about in the past. But you said about pre-Burr, right? Pre-Burr, making sure that you're qualified and you understand on the back end, back to that financial position of bringing in a lender at 100%, paying them more to lend at 100%, but also having the pre-qualified with the banks of how you're actually going to exit on the Burr strategy, which I thought was genius.
The Burr acronym is broken because it assumes that you can qualify, and
you can't.
And if you,
huge.
Hopefully you can, but if you
can't, exactly.
Yeah, it's a terrible thing, because people will go borrow money at high rates. They'll fix the property up. They'll get it rented. And it's great. Like, they can still sell that asset rented turnkey. But if they want to go then refi and they can't, then they're kind of in a bind because they have that high interest. So what happens there is your short-term plan turns into a long-term plan. That's a bad way to go about it. So Gavin, you're exactly right. I like to refer to it as P-BRRRR. It sounds stupid, but none of it matters if you can't get if you're not going to be able to get the refi. So the first thing anybody should do, in my opinion, is to go get pre-qualified for the refi.
So we
buy the asset. And
what we're saying is shore your money up, whether you're going to rehab or you're going to BRRRR or you're going to do anything. You need to shore the house up. The foundation is the money. The foundation is the money. No, you have the exit.
Yeah. It's funny that I never even really realized this in the big picture until Gavin brought it up. And then Don, you seconded it so hard by saying the first thing you do is get your finance part in order. And I'm just like, wow, this is amazing.
And the reason is wholesalers, you don't need the money.
You don't need it.
Right. So you don't need it. You don't even need to think about it. As long as you have money to market with, your exit is someone else is buying it. Someone else is buying it. But when you have to go, well, I'm going to wholesale, I'm going to buy and hold, I'm going to BRRRR, I'm going to fix and flip. Now all of a sudden, this is a different beast altogether.
Yeah, wholesaling isn't investing, in my opinion, because you're taking very
sales and marketing,
risk.
Isn't it?
It's marketing, right? But when you go into the investing field, it's super important to have your money in order.
100%.
Yes, because at that point you're taking risk. With wholesaling, the risk is usually the marketing or the time. Yeah. Right? Which which is fine, but it's not uncalculated essentially. You know what you're spending in terms of time or money towards your marketing budget. Whenever you get into an investment, the risk can be, in some cases endless, it could keep going if you can't sell it or can't get rid of it. So great point, guys. Great point.
Really good.
I want to add one more little nugget here for those that are rehabbing that are watching this. A lot of people fail to work with local vendors like carpet, cabinets, and windows and stuff like that. You can get those local vendors to give you terms net 30, net 60, which means basically they come out, they install it, give you an invoice, and you have 30 or 60 days to pay. All you have to do is establish a relationship and ask. That allows money to go a long way. One of the things that we did is we would get reimbursed from our lender, on the invoice, and then the money would sit in our bank and we wouldn't have to pay the bill for 30 days, which allowed us to be even in a stronger cash position. So just something to throw out there is, a lot of people fail to look at their local service providers as opportunities for relationships. Don't go to Home Depot for windows. Don't go to Home Depot for carpet. Go to your local guy and work out net 30 terms with them. Build that relationship, work out net 30. That makes your money go a lot further.
Yeah, and it's difficult whenever you're at Home Depot buying $50,000 worth of anything, and maybe not even in one visit, guys. This could be over 4 or 5 months, and trying to bargain yourself into a discount. Whereas if you go shake the hand of the local vendor, and you say, hey, what do I got to spend to get 15% off? And he tells you, boom, there you go. You're going to get discounts that way too. Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Really good.
That's
really good.
Yeah, really good. I like that.
So guys, if you have any I just took it off. If you have any questions, ask away, put them in the chat box. If you're watching on Facebook, you may have to, if you want to show your name, you're going to have to say allow StreamYard to show your information. But put in the chat. If you are watching again, please give us a like and share your post to get as many eyes as you can on us. That would be great. So any other questions?
I got a question for you two fellas.
Oh, let's do it.
Have you guys looked into the rental car / Turo business model at all?
Oh my Lord, I saw that post and I'm getting all hot and bothered over it. I'm not going to lie, but my city's Fresno, California, bro. Who wants to rent a high performance car in Fresno, California?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be high performance though.
It could be anything.
Yeah.
It could be any car, really.
Yeah. I've especially no is the answer. I've not thought about it, but right now there's no rental cars anywhere because they all got sold off during COVID. So I think it is, a great opportunity for sure. And you can do, like I said, any car. I mean, you could have anything that's old to, brand new to a supercar, I guess. But what are you asked that, what have you been looking at? You've obviously been
looking my partner Mike and I are looking at maybe buying a Tesla or two. Right behind our office is a big parking lot where we can store it. And 100 yards away from there is a charging station. and you can rent these cars for like $150 a day.
You can get more
So
than
you
that.
get a bare bones one for 36 grand. Your payment's going to be $500 a month with no money out of pocket to buy it, essentially 100% financing. And it just seems like something that would be pretty easy to cash flow $600 to $800 a month, maybe more, maybe $1,000. So I have a few friends that are doing it and they're having some success. And then Don, you had mentioned that post. I'm assuming you're talking about Dolmar's post.
I'm talking about Dolmar's post. Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't even know Dolmar, but seems like a great dude. Would
He's a
love
good
to
dude.
meet him. Yeah. But it was pretty neat seeing his post. I think he had like 10 or 12 cars. And it's no different than a rental game. You know, there's going to be pros and cons to it, of course. Like if something happens and your car gets crashed into or they crashed it, like, of course there's insurance, but like that adds a layer of complexity. Now you have a note that you still have to pay. You have a vehicle that's going to need to get repaired. So higher cash flow, higher risk, but then again, you know, higher reward. So we're thinking about trying it. But the one thing that worries me, again, we're maybe thinking about buying one or even two cars this week and just jumping in and giving it a try, right? That's the way to do it. But the risk that I'm kind of seeing is not necessarily short-term, but long-term. Gavin, you just mentioned that there's like no rental cars. And if you want to get a rental car, it's like $2,000 a week. And Don, you just bought a car because the used car market is so bad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. I found a new one on the parking lot and I was able to pay less than for a used car. You know, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but that's today. There's market cycles.
Right.
In every market, not just the real estate market. There's market cycles in lumber. There's market cycles in petroleum. There's market cycles in everything, right? So at some point, the low supply of used cars or rental car business inventory is going to change, you know?
So what
so
are you thinking
then?
Okay, so you think when it kicks back in, they start buying, there's less demand? Is that's what you...
Well, if you're gonna do it, you want to do it with something that's not ordinary. Like a Tesla is not necessarily ordinary. You know, I mean,
agree.
that's probably
that's why it'll work. Yeah.
I probably wouldn't buy a Honda Accord for this. Like right now, you'll probably make some good money, but long term, I don't think that you will. But you know, where Dolmar came in is he's got like a Jeep or two. I think he's got a Tesla in there.
He's got some convertibles.
Yeah,
he got some cars that are fun. Yeah, and I think that's really the game plan. I'm not trying to go buy Lamborghinis.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, some people could make a ton doing that if they live in Miami or Tampa or New York or LA. But yeah, Fresno and St. Louis, there's not a lot of people that are like, let's go rent the Lamborghini and drive up and down the strip.
Yeah. So, but you're gonna get people that need to rent a car and think it might be fun to have a Tesla, or you know what you're probably gonna get is somebody who's thinking about buying a Tesla and wants an opportunity to drive one for a couple of days before they
absolutely, or people that travel a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a great way for them to get in and out of a fun car. Like, you know, when I went and did a little mini mastermind a couple of weeks back in Omaha, my buddy Rob Seifert, he got a Porsche, and he was like, the Porsche Onturo was cheaper than the Honda Accord at Enterprise. Again, that's a temporary thing, but he was just like, why not have a cool car to drive around? And I'm like, I love it. This is amazing.
No, I like it. There's a lot of people going one more here, but talk about luxury cars. I know a few people in our industry that buy the Lambos, right? The limited edition, that drive them for a year, sell them and make money. I mean, that's a different, that's not, you're not renting it out, but you're just buying cars that people want. And you're literally driving, like, just think about it. Like most cars lose money, right? But your high end, you kind of your limited edition or whatever, like your G-Wagons, your Lambos. If you buy the right ones, people are making money on them, which is insane. They're driving them, putting miles on them, selling them and making money.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
It's mad.
Yeah.
It's mad.
We went to Vegas a couple of years ago and rented like 8 cars, a handful of Lamborghinis, a couple of McLarens, Aston Martin. You know, we didn't do anything too crazy, but we went 100 plus miles an hour. I'm not going to say exactly how fast. We went pretty damn fast. And we put 280 miles on those cars in 24 hours. Like we drove them. So, you know, you got to know that that's something that's going to probably happen. You know, people are going to have fun in your car that you wouldn't necessarily have yourself. But, I think it's okay. So we're off on a tangent here, but that's a good thing. Distractions, right? Is that a distraction from your current business? You know, I have people hitting me all the time about Bitcoin stuff. Dave, I know you're huge into Bitcoin. We don't even, I mean, you're just an entrepreneurial beast, right? it's at a distraction. I always worry about talking about it when I'm doing podcasts and stuff like that. Do I talk about my questions about Bitcoin? Is that a distraction? Is that a distraction from, the things we're doing with the information we're putting out there?
It's a great point.
How do you guys feel about that? People listening here that are building a business and they got all these things coming at them. How many of these distractions should they be even considering, or should they be considering any of them?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think it depends where you are in life and investing, right? I feel that if you're brand new and you're trying to start, you got to focus. You can't have all this nonsense, right?
I agree 100%.
I believe for us where we are, we can have the shiny object of a car rental business, right? Because it's like we're always looking for something else to add. But if we just started, I don't know, like I've got one right now. I've been thinking of, the trucks, like the 18-wheelers. We have a port in Savannah, okay? And they get paid per load coming in and out for local, like taking it across the street from the warehouse to the drop-in from the port to the warehouse, right? And I'm thinking, well, if I buy a truck, how much would the payment be? I can then put a driver in it and pay him a wage to drive it. And what could you make on that? So I'm always looking for random things as well, because it's exciting for me sometimes to be out of real estate and do something different.
So you guys you both have such great points, shiny objects, but also you got to stay interested. So the way I look at it isn't really a car rental business per se. It's the business of acquiring assets with little to no money. And that's the business that I'm in. So real estate is just the easiest product to fulfill that model. Think of it that way for a second. So I go borrow 100,000 to purchase, another 20 or 25 to fix it up. I get it rented, it appraises for 160. I get a refinance. My lenders get paid back plus interest. I have no money in it, and I have a rental that cash flows $200 or $300 a month. With that, you get some depreciation, and someone else is paying it off. It's the business of acquiring an asset with little to no money. The reason I even like this, and again, it is kind of a shiny object, but like it, is because it's the same model. I can go get 10 car loans with none of my own money out of pocket and finance them, and each of these will cash flow, hopefully, 2 to 3 times what a house would, right? So like it's basically just one of the irons in that fire. So I also have another line. It's all vertically integrated essentially though. But another line would be my Airbnb business. I only have 2 Airbnbs, so not a big business, let's say. And they're in the same building. It's a 3-story building. The top 2 floors are a unit. The bottom floor is a unit, right? Thing about that is it's in the city limits in St. Louis where we invest and have this Airbnb. If it's in the city limits, they tax it as like a corporate tax rate versus a residential tax rate. And our taxes on this building went from $3,600 to $7,800 a year because we made it an Airbnb. So it's like, oh man, that eats up so much cash flow by that simple little change.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Sometimes it's just you got to have a couple different irons in the fire because that building essentially breaks even now. $8,000 in taxes a year. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. So what you're telling me is we're here to teach people how to make money without using any of their own time and any of their own money. It sounds like an 80s guru, but that's essentially what we're doing, right? And so what's the most important thing that you need to do? You need to work on building, in your business to make it ultimately successful. And I'm going to throw my answer in there. I think it's access. I think it's access to capital, and I think it's access to the right people. And I think that is the most important tool that you can have when it comes to building this business. And a lot of us don't necessarily feel like we have that when we start, but that's what we always need to be working to, is maximizing that access. Dave, you have access to banks and banking relationships that allow you to do what you do. You have access to a great inner circle that allows you to do what you do. Gavin, I'm sure you have the same, and me as well. So the greater access you have to capital, the greater you're going to be able to leverage that capital to make money without any of your own money. And the greatest access to good people, the less time you're going to spend doing it.
Well said.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You nailed it. That's it. It's access.
And I think as well, but like again, shiny objects is that I think the entrepreneur, right? That's what we are. We're entrepreneurs, and I think there's a lot of people that want to be entrepreneurs that are in 9 till 5s, and that's why maybe they're listening now, or they're trying to invest, or they're trying to do something. And I think one of the most frustrating things for me in the industry is when people keep hopping and can't make, and they just say it doesn't work, and then they hop to the next thing and it doesn't work, and they hop to the next thing and it doesn't work. And you have to come to reality that you're the one that's not working, right? Because clearly, if I'm doing what I'm doing and Don's doing what he's and Dave's doing what he's doing, and we're doing different things and it's all working, it's what you focus on can work. And I think that's the difference. When we take something on, we always give it a good run to really say if it worked or not, right? You're not going to, Dave, you're not going to buy a Tesla and then 2 weeks ago, well, this ain't working because no one's rented it. You're not going to do that, right? In 6 months, you might say.
It's possible that happens.
Yeah, but the point is though, you're not going to say that after, you're not going to chuck it in after 2 weeks.
Is that I'm willing to try.
Yeah, but you're going to give it 6 months, though, aren't you? You're going to give it a long time.
Yeah, we're going to refine.
Not in 2 weeks, you're going to go, no one's rented it, I'm done.
Absolutely.
I'm out of here.
And I'm not just creating this out of thin air. I'm seeing people having success with it.
Doing it, absolutely.
Yeah, and then my buddy Rob, our buddy Rob that I had just mentioned earlier, has a whole business template to do it. Like how to basically do all of it and how to systematize it. And how to place keys so where you don't have to be there to meet people. And I don't know how to do any of that. Right. So
this is the process.
Without some help and guidance, we wouldn't even have thought of this. Right.
So the access to knowledge, access to people, access to capital.
Boom.
Access.
Man, it keeps coming back to that, doesn't it?
So, yeah. But that's to Gavin's point, that's why I said, when we're talking about some of these different things, are they distractions? We have established ourselves in something before we looked at a distraction. And even then, we got to be careful about the distractions we look at. A lot of people will see Dave talk about the rental car industry and feel like they can bounce, like you said, Gavin, without giving the first thing a full run. You have to, whether it's your marketing channel, refining your sales skills, finding private money, no matter what it is you're doing in your business, you have to make sure that you give it a proper run, that you're putting the time and energy or investment into it for it to build its own momentum, period, hands down. And everything takes time to build its momentum. I want to just hammer that in. If anybody's hearing this at all, we built momentum in something, handed it to somebody to run it for us, and we're looking at something else. We're not looking at something else because one thing's not working.
Absolutely. You're transforming or transitioning your fundamentals constantly into each business. You're taking the core of everything we do and we're going into the next thing, but we take a lot of the processes we have, the mentality, the mindset we have into the next thing to be able to build it. I believe that, as silly as it sounds, being a golf professional was one of the main reasons I made it in real estate, because of the mindset. Because I had the mindset that I was never going to give up and it was going to work and I was going to do everything it took to make it work. And I already had that installed from what I used to do. And that's where I come in with a different mindset, where someone else that works for a paycheck, they don't maybe have that, and it's harder. So you got to train your mind. You got to work on the mindset, right? You got to read the books and implement things to build that. But once something works, we would automatically, like Dave's just nailed it, he's taking what he does with houses and puts it into cars. So there's not that much difference in terms of the funding side.
Oh, it's a shiny object. For sure.
It is, but you're transferring what you already do for it to work.
Yeah, it's very similar. It's not that much different. It's not like, I don't look at it like a whole new business. I look at it as a branch of my existing business. Right.
Yeah. But you're not getting into something like, you're not going into being a scientist that you know nothing about, right? You're just going, hold on, this is what I do anyway. Instead of house, I'm going to do it in cars. And then you just have to refine the process of, where do I leave the keys? Do I put them in a lockbox? Do I hide them? Do I?
Yeah.
How do I make sure it charges?
Inspect it afterwards? Yeah. Who's going to clean it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All these things are going to require time and processes and.
So if you want to know about my new Dawn coin that's being developed right now, I'm selling a course on that. You just go to 1-800 Dawn's a dipshit. You buy that course.
Yeah. Fred, the program is called Turo. It's not really a program. It's more of an app. And it's just, it's basically like an Airbnb for cars. It's really no different. And they're cars for rent. And it's short-term rentals. You might be able to find a week or a month or a quarter if somebody's willing to do that for the right price. But typically it's a short-term, like, 2 to 3 day type of thing. And anybody can basically be a host, and anybody else can basically be a customer, client, whatever.
It's an Airbnb. It's
Airbnb for cars. Turo, Turo. Not trying to go down that path, but I did want to address that question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then I guess we'll get back onto real estate, but I think it's important what we're talking about for people to take away. But one thing I will say about, because you brought it up, Don, about the whole coin stuff, I think, again, mindset, you got to see the bigger picture on it. And you've got to be mentally strong, right? Mm-hmm. I remember being in Key West, I think, with Dodge, David Dodge, not Dogecoin, Dodge, and he'd lost like $100,000 that day because it had tanked. He didn't lose it. He never had it. But he's like, so he starts his day. We wake up and he's like, yeah, I just lost $100,000, awesome. And he just goes about his day like nothing, but he never had it. So he's in the right mindset. Now, other people would be like, I'm going to jump off a bridge, just lost $100,000. Like, I can't deal with this. So I think the coin is an emotional roller coaster for people, because if you're on the app watching it going, oh, it's up, it's down, it's a massive mental time suck for me if you're not prepared to go, it's long term, I'm putting it in, whatever happens, I'm done. But a lot of people are like, look, oh, it's gone down, oh, it's up, it's down, it's up, and it's just a nightmare. So I just want to throw that out there because I remember us having that conversation.
I was having a conversation with my son at lunch yesterday. I talked about him. He's working with me right now, training and stuff. And he's talking to somebody about a house that's worth $1.2 million. And the guy wants around $700,000. And I looked at him, he's 16. I said, how do you feel about buying a house for $700,000 right now? And he said, well, if we're going to turn a profit, that was his response. And I go, but you don't feel anything about it. And he's like, first he goes, well, it's not my money, but he goes, if we're going to turn a profit, it's not that big of a deal. And so it just kind of hit home that, then I want to say this out loud. We're talking about, Dave does not have an emotional connection to money. Money is a tool for Dave. And a lot of people will come into this business and they'll have an emotional connection to money, and they'll operate out of fear, and they'll make decisions out of fear, and everything's a cost. And for us, I have zero emotional connection to money. I can write $1 million check out, sign it, and hand it to somebody and have zero effects to me emotionally at all, because it's a tool. It's a tool that's going to allow me to move forward and do what I need to do. And so that's how I look at it.
Having the emotional effect or response or feeling to not. I think that's a good point, Don. Yeah. Really, really good point.
I think part of it is some of us are just built that way. Honestly, I'm built that way, Dave. I know you I don't think you've ever had fear in your life, but hey, maybe you have. I do. Yeah. But some of us are built that way, and some of us, you got to train yourself. It's going to be a mindset thing, and you can consistently tell yourself this is an investment, not a cost. Like marketing is an investment, not a cost. If you're marketing from a position of fear, if you're marketing from a position of being cheap or a broke mindset, and because that money has an emotional connection, and you're not calculating the return on investment when you're making your decision, you're never going to market to the level that you could potentially market to. If you're borrowing from lenders from a position of fear, you're never going to borrow the way you need to borrow to build a successful rehab business. So you got to understand that there's risk and reward, that it is an investment, that sometimes you get kicked in the nuts. And that's just the way it is. And it's going to be a learning experience. But as long as the ROI outweighs, the kicks in the nuts, you're going to be fine, and you move forward. And it's, I think I make it sound easier than it really is for people that have an emotional connection to it. But that's where I see a lot of people struggle. It's not just fear and, how do I talk to a seller? There's also that, well, what if I spend that money on marketing and it doesn't work? We look at it, well, what if we spend that money on marketing and it doesn't work? Okay, well, that's the marketing channel we're not going to spend money on anymore. We're going to deploy over here. So you got to look at the ROI. It's either ROI in knowledge, which you can never lose at that point in time. You have that forever, or it's an ROI in dollars. Yeah. And as long as you're looking at it that way, you should be able to remove some of that fear, or most of that fear.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Great point.
It is great. I mean, especially when it comes to real estate. I have a client that I've been working with a month, and he's got 100 grand in closing in his first 30 days. He's not brand new to the business. He was a rehab. He's in St. Louis, but he comes in and he's not playing at it. Right. So he's throwing money at marketing. He's bringing in leads. He's not saying I got $500 to spend, because a lot of people that come into our space, they want to spend $500 a month, but they want 10 deals. Right. And it's just not going to happen. So you have to be willing to spend the money and it's an investment. Right. It isn't it's not costing you. You have to do it. It's just the cost of doing business. To be able to do that. So that's a great point. People say, well, I want the results of that guy, but he's working 10 hours a day. He's putting money into systems and marketing, and you work a 9 to 5 and you want to work 30 minutes a day and you want to spend $500 a month. So you cannot get the results he's getting, right? It's not possible. So you have to look at the whole concept when we teach to say, well, I want to be like that guy. Well, you've got to act and you've got to take action like that guy or that gal. Does that make sense? I think people don't understand that. Like, oh, I want to do 10 deals a month, but I only want to spend 1,000 max. It's not going to happen, you know?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a really good point.
This is where I'm just going to say it. I'm going to call it the elephant in the room. Dave is not talking enough on this call. I know we gave him a bad time last time, but you're really trying to behave yourself, buddy, and it's awkward.
He keeps laughing to himself. It's hilarious.
Man, I got it a couple times this week. Shut up. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to keep it.
Again, people beating you up, Dodge.
Unbelievable, right? Unbelievable.
What's wrong with people? What's wrong with people? I don't know what to say. I'm ready for you to lead. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've had some really good conversations today, boys. The access, I want to kind of just circle back on that. I think that is such a great, I'm looking at it as like a perspective, like, but it's so instrumental to have access. How do you get access? Let's just talk about that for a second. It's relationships. Mm-hmm. Is it anything else?
It's networking, isn't it?
It's relationships. No, it's relationships.
It's relationships.
Yeah. Look, the best money that you can get when it comes to, if you're going to borrow from an institution, is from a local bank and building a relationship with a local bank. It's not some massive conglomerate, Bank of America, whatever. You go down to your local, like Fresno First Bank here in Fresno. You build those relationships. They're the decision makers. They know you. They like you. They're going to lend to you. Private money lenders, building those relationships. People know and like you and trust you. They're going to lend you. Access to capital, is huge. The same thing with, hey, Dave, I need help with this, blah, blah, blah. I can call you and ask you a question because we have that relationship. And so, it's people think that, oh, I'm going to do this, and somebody's automatically obligated to give me this knowledge or give me this money. And they don't understand that it takes time to build that foundation of trust and that foundation of friendship, and that I got your back. But there are people out there, there are people vendors that will have your back. Some will stab your back. A lot of them will have your back. There are lenders that will have your back. There are people in the community that will have your back. Yes, you got to watch out for the snakes. There are plenty of snakes, and I'm sure we got our own list of them, right, boys? But there are some great people out there that will literally give you the shirt off their back to help you be successful. And you got to not be afraid to build those relationships, because that access is huge.
The access is everything, and it really is. And everything that I do and that we do is to better our relationships. Like this live stream right here, let's help people, let's get together, let's network. But it also builds credibility that we know what we're doing, right? Mm-hmm. And it's going to strengthen relationships with people that we don't even really know. But those people may be lenders, or they may be an agent that has a deal for us or whatever, right? So it's constantly building on the relationships, which basically gives you access. And access gives you the ability to do things and control. And it's such a great way to look at it, guys. I'm really happy that we had this conversation, because it's opening my mind up to some things as well too right now about the fact that it is just access.
Yeah. And the one of the ways that we learn as well is that you'll notice that a lot of the time we're talking about the things that went wrong, right? Because we're just people at the end of the day, right? So when they listen, they go, oh yeah, that's me, I do that, or yeah, I don't want to do that. Because at the end of the day, we could sit here and just tell you what works, but that'd be a false that'd be faults in the business, right? Obviously, it's good for a mindset to go, oh, this is what can be achieved. But you also have to look at the mistakes and for people to learn going in little things like the painting, the yard work, like when to do it, being pre-qualified on the burr method before you think about do it, like all these things that go. I mean, I'd not thought about it until you said that earlier with the bird method. I'd not heard of anyone say it. It's not my strategy, but I'm like, makes a lot of sense.
But doesn't that make a lot of sense? Especially if
it makes a lot of sense.
People don't think of it. They're like, oh, let's get approved.
Common sense.
You might not get approved. Yeah. Exactly. And there's a thing called seasoning. And in the beginning, you're going to have it, period. Yeah. It took me a year to go from 6 months to 3 months of seasoning. And then it took another year to go from 3 months to 1 to 2 months. And then it took another year to go to a month. And I'm finally at the point now where they just want to see the lease. But that took me 3.5 years.
Building a relationship.
Building a relationship that
access.
gives me access to loans with less seasoning.
Yeah.
And that's probably a local lender too, huh?
All of them are.
Yeah. So let me for people who don't know what seasoning is, let's educate, because if somebody hears seasoning for the first time, what is seasoning, Dave?
It's not what goes on steaks and sausages.
Yeah, no. So what is it?
So seasoning is basically the lender requiring you, the borrower, to have built and established a lease or income on a property. And, obviously we're talking about real estate. So seasoning could go different with a different type of loan, right? But on a real estate loan, the seasoning refers to the fact that it's performing. So they don't want to lend on a vacant property, and they don't want to lend on a property that you just leased yesterday, because what happens if that guy just doesn't move in and he doesn't show up? So seasoning is a way for the bank to kind of mitigate their own risk by, in the beginning, saying, hey, we want to see 6 months leased, and we want to see the rent roll. Like, we want to see it, like, prove that guy paid you the rent 6 times. And that's essentially what 6 months seasoning is. So it may take you longer than 6 months to get 6 months seasoning. That's 6 months rented. So if you buy a property that needs 20 or 25 grand worth of rehab, which typically we shoot for those type of properties, because you also have to earn that entrepreneurial credit, which is going to be a minimum rehab amount in order for them to lend on the appraisal, not the purchase cost, right? But just to simplify, not go on forever about this, seasoning basically shows that it's performing, and it's proof that it's performing. So in the beginning, the bank's going to give you longer seasoning because you don't have as strong of a relationship. So they're going to mitigate the risk. As your relationship builds and grows, which it will naturally, they're going to say, hey, this lender he's less risk. So we only need to see 3 months. And again, at this point, this took me 100 burrs, guys. By the way, I've done 100 of these. Not saying that to brag, but it takes that many essentially of relationship building for them to say, hey, we don't require it. And some banks still do, guys. It's only the ones that I've done 40 loans with that say, yeah, you're good for it. We know. Right. Yeah. So,
and just to kind of throw it out there, some banks will define it differently. Some banks just look at seasoning as time of ownership, length of ownership. They may not want to see performance. And that could, like if you're going to refinance a personal residence, you're going to buy something and turn around and refinance it. They may want you to own it for 6 months or a year before you're allowed to refinance it. So, but that's, and something to be said about lenders. Let me just throw one more thing about lenders. And I believe banks are the same way. Everybody knows that everybody is going to do good when the chips are good, when you're winning. A lot of lenders want to see how you handle yourself when a project doesn't go right. That's going to be the biggest test. If you have a private money lender and it's a break-even property, but the interest is a loss, and you write that interest check and the lender knows that was a loss, that lender is going to lend to you again and again and again and again. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people go to that lender and say, well, I didn't make any money. Can I get less interest? Look, that's a risky move. You write that lender that check and you're guaranteed loans. And when lenders see that you handle yourself properly and you honor your word when the chips are down, you're going to have a lender for life.
Yeah. In my eyes, you can't even go back and ask because you're paying them a small piece to make a lot. So if you don't make a lot or won't make any, you had that opportunity. You screwed it up, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So how do we prevent this from happening, guys? It's so simple. There's one simple answer, in my opinion. Buy lower. Yeah. The bigger discount
when you buy.
the less risk you take on. That when I go buy a deal, I don't even look at the upside. People think I'm crazy when I tell them this. I don't give a shit. What I look at is how can I screw up 3 different ways? Because I might screw up one way, right? I hope not to, but it may happen. But how do I screw up 3 different ways and still break even? Did we get it low enough? Right? And then you basically, I don't want to say mitigate them to 0 because there's always a risk, but you can reduce your risk substantially if you don't pay anywhere near retail. 20% discounts minimum, and that's without wholesaling. That's just to try to get it into, the portfolio with none of your own money or even little to no money. So on average, guys, I still leave a little in a deal. Like I think my average right now is probably around $1,200 that we leave in a property. But check this out. When we first started 4 years ago, it was $16,000. Right? A year goes by, we get it down to $10,000. Another year goes by, we get it down to $3,000. Some deals we can walk with a couple grand, but some deals the bank says, hey, we're not giving you 80%, and we're still going to lend on the appraisal because you did what we wanted you to do by fixing the property up and mitigating our risk as the bank, but we're not giving you 80% in that neighborhood. We'll give you 75%. Well, we may have calculated 80. No big deal. You leave $1,500 in a deal that's going to cash flow and all the other things, right? So just know that it's not always a 0 out type of a game. The relationship matters, I think is the point.
100%. Yeah, really good.
Cool.
Okay, well, we're at time. Next week.
Close us out, Gavin. Close us out, buddy.
Yeah, so guys, make sure we won't be late normally. We haven't been late. This is the first time. But every Wednesday, 12 Eastern, 11 Central, 9 Pacific, join us, Coffee with Closers. It's always going to be myself, Don, and Dave. And plus, we will bring on special guests. We will keep you up to date throughout the week on who that's going to be, who's coming up next. And remember, bring your questions, and we have free resources as well. If you go to coffeewithcloserslive.com, coffeewithcloserslive.com, we have where you can pull lists. We've got free trials on the systems that we use. You can sign up. Again, if they don't work for you, cancel within 7 days, and it won't cost you a thing. So go and check them out as well. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye. We ended it.